You're listening to Radio Eden, and thank you for tuning in to this program. My name is Michael Schomborn, and I want to talk to you about a really interesting chapter in the book of Isaiah, and it's chapter 3. Let me just read the chapter, and then we'll go through it. See now, the Lord Almighty, is about to take from Jerusalem and Judah both supply and support, all supplies of food and all supplies of water, the hero and the warrior, the judge and the prophet, the diviner and the elder, the captain of 50 and the man of rank, the counselor, skilled craftsman, and clever enchanter. I will make mere youth their officials. Children will rule over them. People will oppress each other, man against man, neighbor against neighbor. The young will rise up against the old, the nobody against the honored. A man will seize one of his brothers in his father's house and say, "You have a cloak, you be our leader, take charge of this heap of ruins." But in that day he will cry out, "I have no remedy, I have no food or clothing in my house, do not make me the leader of the people." Jerusalem staggers, Judah is falling. Their words and deeds are against the Lord, defying his glorious presence. The look on their faces testifies against them. They parade their sin like Sodom. They do not hide it. Woe to them. They have brought disaster upon themselves. Tell the righteous it will be well with them, for they will enjoy the fruit of their deeds. Woe to the wicked. Disaster is upon them. They will be paid back for what their hands have done. Youth oppress my people, women rule over them. My people, your guides, lead you astray. They turn you from the path. The Lord takes his place in court. He rises to judge the people. The Lord enters into judgment against the elders and leaders of his people. It is you who have ruined my vineyard. The plunder from the poor is in your houses. What do you mean by crushing my people and grinding the faces of the poor, declares the Lord Almighty. And then verses 16 and onwards, the Lord says, "The women of Zion are haughty, walking along with outstretched necks, flirting with their eyes, strutting along with swaying hips, with ornaments jingling on their ankles. Therefore the Lord will bring sores on the heads of the women of Zion. The Lord will make their scarves bald. In that day the Lord will snatch away their finery, the bangles, the headbands, the crescent necklaces, the earrings, the bracelets, the veils, the headdresses, the anklets, the sashes, the perfume, the bottles and charms, the signet rings, the nose rings, the fine robes, the capes, cloaks and purses, mirrors, and linen garments, and tiaras and shawls. Instead of fragrance there will be a stench, and instead of a robe, instead of well-dressed hair, baldness, instead of fine clothing, sackcloth, instead of beauty, branding. Your men will fall by the sword, your warriors in battle. The gates of Zion will lament and mourn, destitute she will sit on the ground." Okay, this is Isaiah chapter 3. And I have to say it's quite a gruesome chapter, and it sounds really harsh. And I want to sort of take you a little bit through this chapter to see what it's saying, and to see what God is saying also to our generation, in our age and in our time, through the generations, by this chapter. Let me start with the first part of the chapter, verses 1 to 7, and it says, "See now, the Lord Almighty, is about to take from Jerusalem and Judah both supply and support, all supplies of food and all supplies of water." And then it carries on, and it says he also takes the hero, the warrior, the judge, the prophet, the diviner, the elder, the captain of 50, the man of rank, the counselor, the skilled craftsman, the clever enchanter. Okay, so these are all the things which are taken away. And I had to sort of look at this text, and I thought, what is happening here in this text? And basically what is described here is a total breakdown of society. So all people who make society run, who make society work, are taken out of the equation. They're no longer there. And it starts off with no food and no water. And I had to think about it, what this really means. And let me give you an example. About a year ago, we had a really strong winter here in the UK. and what happened is that there was a strong snowfall. No traffic got through anymore. All the roads were blocked off with a huge amount of snow. And then we had a power cut. And suddenly something happened. Everybody panicked and went to the shops, bought as much as they could, milk, bread, anything. And obviously the power wouldn't come back. And the roads in the state there were, it was unlikely that the electricity board would get somebody to reconnect the power. Now, what is the significance of all this? Now, if the power is gone, then heating doesn't work. It was quite cold because you've got a pump in your central heating system and it's powered by electricity. If the power doesn't work, if electricity isn't there, then cooking doesn't work either. So straight away there's a problem. So I thought to myself, I'm quite fortunate here. I've still got a lot of camping equipment from last summer, so I had a means to cook. I had a small generator, so I could have some electricity as well. And I had quite a bit of food left in the house, but I started to worry a little bit. So I thought I'd better go to the shops and get something. As I was going downtown, trying to find my way through the snow, a neighbor came up and he said, "Don't worry, don't bother going to town, everything is gone." Okay, so no food. Take this step further. Most of the water supply relies on electricity as well, with pumps and other bits to try and get the water pressure into your system. If that doesn't go, and one morning you wake up and you've got no food, you've got no water, and then people can't get to work. We had something similar here as well when we had the petrol crisis on, petrol strike, that a lot of people couldn't get to work, and suddenly government doesn't work anymore. The police doesn't work, there's no food around, the courts don't work, there's no law enforcement in place, the utility companies don't work anymore, and you very soon you come to a total breakdown of society. So what happens? What happens when suddenly people haven't got any food in the house anymore? And what do people do to one another? And it says here, people oppress each other, man against man, neighbor against neighbor. Young will rise up against the old, and nobody against the honored. A man will seize one of his brothers in his father's house and say, "You have a clog, be our leader." So this is what it comes down to. You have to find somebody to bring some order, to create some order in this chaos which will emanate from such a situation. And you have to find somebody to just try and bring order back into this whole situation. Will it work? It says in here, the guy will say, "No, don't make me a leader, there's no point. I've barely got anything to eat myself. I'm just fighting for survival myself. You look for somebody else to try and take charge and to try and bring some order into this chaos." No, the judgment God is pronouncing here is total breakdown of society. Nothing works, nothing goes, and society is at an end. And where is God prophesying this? It's quite interesting as well. It's not Beirut, it's not Lebanon, it's not Egypt, it's Jerusalem. It's a very place where the presence of God is. Very scary, a really, really scary thought. And I had to think about this. And I had to think, where would this happen? Where could this take place? And I thought, when I look at Western Europe and I look at the West, at the land of the Reformation, the land where sort of great knowledge of God has been permeated from, for example, Germany, England, Scotland as well, Scandinavia, where you had great theologians, great guys, and people really had a desire and a hunger for God, and they were walking in the ways of God. And then what I've seen is over the last generation, they've just abandoned God. The leaders, very often the leaders within the church, they've had very strange ideas, very liberal ideas, and they abandoned the very clear message of the Bible and started to basically destroying the faith they were supposed to stand for and to protect, and we're dragging everything down. Now, what we've got now and what I've seen over the last couple of generations is just a total abandonment of Christian principles and Christian values in a so-called Christian country, and very often for the worst of all reasons. Okay, we're going to look at this a little bit more later. Okay, so Jerusalem was a place where God was revealing himself, where God has chosen his people, where God had chosen to be for his glory to be revealed. And when you look in the Bible, you just have to go back to the days of Solomon, and you can see the glory of God in Jerusalem and what was happening there in the temple. And now this place is a place of desolation and of devastation, and nothing happens anymore. Okay, let's go a little bit further. It goes on, Jerusalem staggers, Judah is falling, that's verse 8 of Isaiah chapter 3. The words and deeds are against the Lord, defying his glorious presence. That's interesting. So Jerusalem staggers, Judah is falling. Sort of the very land God has chosen, where the people of God are, where they were supposed to be, has fallen. And their words and deeds are against the Lord. And I think this describes very much our society. What's been happening over the last generation is that our nations and our societies in Europe, in America, have more and more gone away and gone against the Lord. Very, very strange indeed, the way it's been happening and sort of how it's been slowly creeping up on us. And it goes on, and the look on their faces testifies against them. They parade their sin like Sodom. They do not hide it. And I think this pretty much describes what's happening today. People are openly, going against principles which are laid down in the Bible. I'll give you one example. It's the whole thing about redefining marriage. That suddenly marriage is no longer between a man and a woman, but it's between a man and a man and a woman and a woman. It's totally unbiblical, and it's got no precedence even in history that this was considered to be acceptable anywhere in history. But then we've got the 20th century and suddenly the 21st century, and suddenly it's all okay. In my opinion, it's a farce. I mean, I don't want to ever go and hate against these communities, but in my opinion, you cannot redefine white, you cannot redefine black, and you cannot redefine marriage. Marriage has been a union between man and woman, and as a result, you get children. And nature, this is just like a very simple thing. Nature tells you when there's a union between a man and between a woman and a woman, there's no productive result. There are no children coming out of it. It is not the way nature intended it. This is just as clear as anything. But yet, politicians have gone in, and because it's acceptable, and I think the media has been working for years to try and make it more acceptable, and there's a really strong lobby within that camp that all these things came about. But it's not just that. There are a lot of other things as well. There are a lot of other things as well where, for example, greed is perfectly acceptable these days. There's some sort of callousness in society which has never been there before, where it's okay to exploit and to do, just straightforward exploitation of labor, and not to really care about labor, to just use them, as best as you can without proper contracts and so on. There's no sense of responsibility of companies anymore to look after their, I'm not saying all, but you find this more and more, not to look after the employees as treasured, members of the company, but they're just human resources. I don't like the term particularly, but that's what they've been reduced to. It's just a resource, like coal, like energy, like raw materials. So you've got human materials as well, and you call them human resources these days. Okay, it says here they've brought disaster upon themselves. Tell the righteous it'll be well with them, for they will enjoy the fruit of their deeds. Woe to the wicked, disaster is upon them. They will be paid back for what their hands have done. Okay, they parade their sin like Sodom. And just to go a little bit back, Sodom was predominantly a sexual, people in sexual perversion and errancy. So they were just giving themselves to lust. Anything which felt right, that's what these guys were doing. Whether it was good or it was not good. Whether it was good in the eyes of God or it wasn't. And we are slowly going there, where anything goes. Anything is acceptable, and there are a couple of exceptions, but people fall for that, and they come to a place in their life where they're just pleasure seekers all the way through, without really having a heart for God or seeking God or even wanting to know about God. And sort of when I look around, I find this very often, that talking to people, that people are just not bothered about God. They just don't want to know. It's something which is antiquated, it's old, it's out of fashion. They're not interested. They don't want to know about God. And I think when we talk about sin and the way they parade sin, it's one of the biggest issues I think we have in our generation. That there is just like an open and blatant godlessness, and people pride themselves in it as well. It scares the wits out of me because I love people. I love all people, and I know God loves people as well, and He loves them all far more than I can ever imagine. He loves you far more than you will ever be able to imagine yourself. And yet, people have got this distorted view of God. They think that God is this Santa lookalike guy in the sky, and He is there to love everybody and to shower everybody with all His blessings and all His goodness. And when you die, you lift up, you stand before God, and everything is okay. No, it's not. That's a problem. I mean, Jesus, He made a point, and He said that wide is a way that leads to condemnation, that leads to damnation, and that there is only a narrow way, and only few will find it. And this is not God being mean. God has done everything He can to try and provide this way for you, this way out of this flood of dissipation, out of this flood of lawlessness and godlessness, into a way of true joy, true love, true peace, in fellowship with God, and this way through Jesus Christ. So big issue here, big issue we are looking at. But I want to tell you one thing. When you look at this text, there's a little bit of light as well. It looks really, really bad, God is going to judge Jerusalem. God is going to judge Europe and America for abandoning the way of God, and for turning and distorting very often the things God has entrusted to us, His word, His gospel, and for wrong leaders being allowed to carry on like that. But anyway, there's some light in here, and it says in here, "Tell the righteous, it will be well with them, for they will enjoy the fruits of their deeds," or the fruit of their deeds. And who are the righteous? Are they people who live very well? I'll tell you one thing: if you want to live very well and you want to be a righteous person, you will not find the strength to do it out of your own mind and out of your own heart. You really need God to lead and guide you into a path of righteousness. Ultimately, righteousness is through Jesus Christ, through what He did on the cross, that He died and paid for all of your sins, and that He has prepared a way for you, a way back to God. And once you enter on this way back to God by accepting what Jesus has done for you on the cross, that He paid for you the price, then you can change your ways, and you can find the strength to turn away from a life of lawlessness, of godlessness, to a life of goodness and greatness. Right, let's go a little bit further. I look at our generation, the generation in the West, and I mentioned a couple of things before, and what I see a lot of licentiousness. Anything goes, anything is okay, as long as it is generally accepted. You can do what you want. You can talk the way you want. You can, even offend God, blaspheme. That's all fine. It's acceptable. Abortion is okay. You can be pro-choice. That's what it's called today, instead of pro-life. So pro-choice means yes, it's okay to kill unborn babies. And then obviously we need to have something we can rally around and where we can feel bad about and where we can do something. So what do we get? We get climate change. Personally, I believe it's the biggest lie of the century, last century and this century. Climate change is there, but I don't believe that it's man-made. And what we find is that people are having a conscience suddenly about it. When you talk to little kids and you talk what they are concerned about, what they're worried about, it's very often the world, the climate change. And so they've been so well conditioned and so well trained that now you can control them with the energy they use and the way they behave or what they do, just with the climate change thing and the amount of carbon they pour out. So you can start controlling them with this big lie, which I believe is a big lie, which is being pumped out into the world, and people have a conscience about this. No, I don't believe that it's necessary to waste food, to waste energy. I think it's a good thing, maybe the only good thing which comes out of it, that we look for alternative sources of energies. which are cleaner, better, healthier. And I don't discard this, and I think it's a good development. But then on the other side, why do we get guilty about these things and we get a bad feeling about it, yet we don't feel bad about it if we embark on a tour of selfishness, of self-glorification, of godlessness, and of rejecting God. The other thing which kind of really gets to me is sometimes a little bit the way we treat our old people. You know, they're very lonely, they're carted off, they're isolated in society. People just don't have time for anybody or anything anymore. Why? Because they're preached to have this great, wonderful lifestyle, and parents don't look after the kids anymore because both parents need to work. Sometimes, I'm not knocking it, you really need to work to make ends meet, but these are mechanisms which have been created in society which are not necessarily positive and beneficial. And they're not really structured there to look after the kids either. So something is going really, really wrong in society where we don't look after the young, we don't look after the old, we value the people who work, people who don't want to work, we sometimes support them, and we don't encourage them to return to work, but we give them lots and lots of money for doing nothing. So there are a lot of problems where we have failed, I think, in society on a big scale. And very simply, we have abundant Christian principles en route of doing that. What else have we got? We've got corruption, which is creeping back into Western society. I remember my father's generation, even though I'm sure corruption was there, but it was virtually unheard of. People did a job, they did their duty, they had a sense of pride in doing their duty, and they didn't ask for money or anything like that. So corruption wasn't really that rampant and rife. We look at it today, and we look at what was happening with the bankers, that they were just unscrupulous in dishing out loans, and just for the sake of their own profit and benefit. We look at politicians as well. I mean, there was a time in England where bankers and politicians were pretty much considered to be the most evil people in society, due to rampant abuse of expenditure accounts and other things they did. So, I mean, there's something wrong in society, and I can see this all over, that there is more and more corruption creeping back into European society at a level that's never been there before, where at all levels, the richer are getting rich, and they manipulate systems to get better payouts, to get more money, to look after their own interests more. And the middle class turns more into an impoverished middle class who come to a point where they can barely pay the bills they have to pay for on account of ruthless and greedy people who manage to push more money to the top and skim it off the people at the bottom. Furthermore, taxation as well. They realize they can't get the taxation from the people at the top because they've got many ways of trying to protect their money. So they look for the weakest link, which is the people in the middle. Can't tax the people at the bottom of the scale, but they can do it very well with the people in the middle. So there's just this one group of people, the so-called middle class, who gets it in the neck from all sides. And again, it's very, very sad, because people at the top, they do have responsibility to create jobs, responsibility to build society, to create society, but everything seems to have gone away in favor of just making sure that you're okay and forgetting about everybody else. That's a little bit what I find in society. It's slowly developing and getting through. And that is one of the things which are sort of criticized in this text, where you get a failing society, and the result may be that judgment is going to come, and God is going to judge society because of its ruthlessness, its oppression which is there, to a point where society comes to a complete standstill and breakdown. Okay. The last thing I want to criticize is the media. The media has gone crazy, which is really interesting. When I look at films from the 50s, most of the films you can see on television, they had a moral story, and there was something there to encourage people to live a good life and to be good, and there was always a moral lesson in there. Even right to the 80s, there were a lot of programs which pursued the same aim of teaching people how to be good and how to be nice. When I look at TV programs over the last 10 years, it seems to have gone a complete opposite way. I've heard one statement from Hollywood that about pushing the envelope, about sticking some more immorality into television and so on, and stretching it a little bit further, that they were saying there isn't an envelope to push anymore. There isn't an envelope to push. And things have gone sort of from bad to worse, really, when you look at the media. Some of the sitcoms you see, it's quite shocking how things are presented and how negative behavior is reinforced and good behavior is discouraged or ridiculed as being old and old-fashioned or whatever. It's very sad. I mean, people look this and without realizing, they accept a different set of values because it's being preached to them every day through television. The only fortunate thing I can see in our contemporary age is that the monopoly of the Hollywood media is dying a death slowly. Why? Because we've got so many alternative media these days. On satellite television you see hundreds of channels giving small broadcasters a chance to present their own view, and then you've got all the online media such as YouTube and others, where people present maybe a different view and something which isn't really portrayed by Hollywood. So, but nevertheless, the damage has been done. People have changed a complete mindset. They've changed attitudes. They've changed morality. And I would go even so far and say they've lost their moral compass. They don't know anymore what is right and what is good. Okay, what does this passage teach us, which we've got here in Isaiah? First of all, there's one big point which comes out of here, and that is that there will be a judgment, and it can be grim. And this judgment can consist of complete and utter dissolution of society. Now, there's a warning here. It's happened in the past many times. Every couple of 100 years, we have had something. We've had the plague, which pretty much decimated Europe, and almost came to a point that society was brought down to zero for a short time, and then it had to come back up again. We've had the time after the war, after the Second World War, and I sort of hear the stories from my grandparents and also from grandparents in Russia, where on both sides, in the West and the East, society was almost brought to a standstill. And this text was almost real. There was nobody there. It was just anarchy. Society was let loose. Nobody controlled anything. It was just chaos. There was no food. There was no drink. There was no police. There was no order in society. There was no protection. Everybody had to be there for himself, and you had to protect your own goods with brute force. So very, very grim status which we had in those years after the wars. Very, very dangerous. Okay, the next point which is made here, you have to. There's some light as well, and that light is that God will preserve the righteous. So if you are on the side of God, all this stuff can be happening, and God is still going to look after you in some way or another. And that is a great promise. There are stories around from Christians who are facing really, living in really serious conditions, and they find some divine providence of food and, stuff they need to just maintain their lives and to carry on, to be able to carry on. There's another lesson as well, and this is you have to make a choice of where you will be. Do you want to follow the flood of dissipation, godlessness, just being haughty, proud, looking at, your ways rather than God's ways? Do you want to abandon the love of God He has for you, and instead you want to go after lust, feed your greed, expand your sexual desire, and embracing perversion? I mean, this is a question we've got here. What do you want in your life? Yeah? And many people would quite blatantly say, and I've met them, that they don't want to give up women. They don't want to give up one-night stands. That's okay. That's their life. That's what they want to do. They want to be rich. That's all they're here for. They just want to make money, nothing else, and get as much as they possibly can. Or others, whatever lusts they have, they just want to indulge in them all the time. And saying all these things, some of them are good. Sexual appetite is good. God has put it inside of you, but you should use it in the framework God has given you. Accumulating wealth is a good thing, but you should do it responsibly and look after the poor at the same time, and not do it on the back of the poor, which is happening very often today. Your lusts. Lust can be a positive thing, or should I say desire. Desire can be a positive thing, but it needs to be harnessed into something which is good. It needs to be harnessed into what God is. It needs to be balanced. If it's unbalanced and unharnessed, it's very destructive, and it'll destroy your life. And worse than that, it'll drive you away from God. Okay, so basically, the question is, do you want to do this, or do you want to abandon your self-destructive lifestyle and really turn to God? And there's another interesting aspect as well. All this happened, in the place where God should be found. For our day and age, we see a warning in this passage for the Christian West. That's what I see. And I look at Europe, and I look where Europe was maybe 100 years ago, even 1 or 2 generations ago, where people, even if they weren't committed Christians, but they were embracing godly values, Christian values, and everything is being thrown overboard. All these values have been thrown overboard, and we have created our own morality, our new morality, which is very far removed from a biblical morality. And there's a warning in this passage, and that warning is that, look, you want to do it without God, you will be without God. There will be no provision, there will be no protection, there will be no order, there will be no authority, and you can do what you want. And you will find yourself in a position where you cannot live anymore, where you cannot survive, because everything has been stripped from underneath your feet. That's a warning we've got here, and that's a warning to Europe as well. To Europe, watch out. Watch out, Europe, and America as well, the Christian countries, the Christian Occident, and make sure that you are doing the right thing before God, that you turn back to God. And I'm talking to you on an individual level. Text says God's going to look after you if you are righteous. And I'm talking on a national level as well. Return to God and return to the values and the principles of God, and abandon the madness that is going on here. The madness of corruption, of greed, of legalizing immoral sexuality, and so on. It's just crazy. Ultimately, God will judge. Our deceptive contemporary understanding of God tells us a story of a benevolent, tatty old guy in white, being really, with a white long beard, and he loves us all. He's with us. But the Bible gives us a different picture, and the Bible gives us a picture that God is a God of wrath, a God of anger, and that the anger of God, the wrath of God, will remain on those who refuse to come to Him. If you don't come to God, you will never experience the love of God in your life, even though He does love you. But His righteousness and His holiness demands that His wrath and His anger will stay upon you. How can we avoid it? It's very easy as well, because God has provided a way for you, away from His wrath, away from His anger, right into His heart, right into His arms, so that you can experience the love of God. And that is that all the bad things, all the bad you've done before God. I'm not talking climate change, I'm talking the sins before God, which is first commandment, love the Lord thy God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. Every one of us has broken this umpteen times, a million times. Now, He has taken this guilt we've got before God, and He's taken it away from us, and He placed it on Jesus. And Jesus says in John chapter 3, verse 36, he who believes in the Son, that is in Jesus, has everlasting life, and he who does not believe in the Son shall not see life, but the wrath of God abides on him. In other words, if you believe Christ of what He did for you on Calvary, then you will have eternal life. But if you don't believe on Him, and belief is not just, He might be there or not. Belief means you trust Him and you are faithful to Him. There are these two concepts which are there, trusting and faithfulness. You commit yourself to Him. That's what belief means in a biblical context. If you don't do this, you will not see life, but the anger, the wrath, the displeasure of God remains on you, stays on you, and you will not see God. Instead, you will die, and you will die in your sins, and you will go straight into a place of torment. Jesus warns about this many times. If you say that Jesus was a good teacher, then you have to take this serious as well. Jesus spoke more about hell and about damnation than what He did about paradise and heaven. So just bear this in mind. This good teacher, who you may consider to be a good teacher, talked more about this about hell. So better take it serious. You will run away from God. You run away from Christ. Your destiny is going to be eternal torment. I mean, today when I was driving home, I was listening to and they interviewed an undertaker on German radio, and he was talking about death. That it's quite a pleasant thing and it's a good thing. And he was saying what he was doing with the corpses, when embalming them and all the rest of it. But what he said is, what death is like, it goes from one sea to another. You're in a sea, you get born, then you come into this life, and you die, and you get to another sea, and everything will be happy. No, you can believe an undertaker, or you can believe Jesus Christ. Now, Jesus Christ says when you die, there are only two choices. You either go to be with God, because you've accepted what Jesus has done for you, and you're reconciled with God, or you go to hell. As easy as that. And that would be a place of torment, a place which you don't like, a place of incredible pain, a place where you do not want to be, and you have to wait until Judgment Day. So however long it takes until Judgment Day is, you will be stuck in this place of torment. Then you will be judged and you will be thrown into the lake of fire, which is not prepared for man, but it's prepared for the fallen angels, the ones who are deceiving you and who are telling you the story about God being a benevolent guy and that he loves us all, and that, which is true, but here's the untruth, that everybody will get into heaven, regardless of who they are and regardless of what they do, unless they are Hitler or Stalin and they've done a lot of evil things. Then obviously these two guys will go to hell, but everybody else goes to heaven. Big, big lie. Don't believe it. Don't do it. Don't follow it. But instead, open your heart, open your arms, and cry Jesus. Cry out for Jesus to come into your life and to come into your heart and to reveal himself to you, so that you can make a new start, so that you can make a new beginning, that you can become a child of God, and that you can enter on the narrow way which will lead you to love, to peace, to genuine love, genuine peace, and to fellowship with God in eternity. I'm going to finish on this point. The text goes on and it talks about the women of Zion, talks about the swaying hips, flirting eyes, all the stuff they do, and all it talks about is just sensuality, they're in for. And I tell you one thing, in this world we've got sensuality as well. And this is a lot of people, they just live for whatever they can get out of this world, and they're going to grab hold of it with all their might and all their power, and with taking big risks as well. I've seen this a lot when I went to Eastern Europe, that you get very ruthless people. You get a rich class, they drive fancy cars, they oppress the poor really badly, because they want to have a Lotus, they want to, be that much better than anybody else. And why? Because for about 70 years under communism, they've been told there is no God. What you have is whatever you've got here. Once this is gone, you're finished. That's it. So you may as well take hold of everything you can. The problem is it's not true. And if it were true, if you die and you just like a dog, the light switched off and you're gone, that would be nice, but it's not. Your existence is forever. You will live forever, whether you want to or not. Whether you take your life or you don't take your life, you will live forever. The question is, where are you going to live? Are you going to live with God in peace and tranquility? Are you going to live with him who has created joy, who has created love, who has created all good things on this planet? Or are you going to be in the place of torment, in the place of lies, in the place of shame, in the place of destruction, in the place of pain, incredible pain? And this is a question you have to answer yourself of what you want to do. You want to go to hell or you want to go to God, be with him. Okay, I'm going to leave it at this point. Maybe the last point as well, if you're a woman and you read through this chapter in Isaiah chapter 3. These women are selling themselves really cheap. They are showing off their bodies, they're dressing it up, they're using a lot of things to try and make it look little bit more pretty and to make it more desirable. They're totally given to sensuality. And if you're a woman and you read this, it's pretty harsh judgment on women as well. I mean, God is saying that he's going to strip all the beauty off them. I'm going to tell you, don't sell yourself cheap. You are more than that. Women are some of the greatest assets in our world, if not the greatest, to some extent. I'm sure God is greater still, but they are. Don't sell yourself cheap. Don't sell yourself cheap. Make sure that you make your value known, and that that your value is high, and that whoever deserves to be by your side will have to work for it and will have to earn your respect and your confidence, your faithfulness and your love. And that is my admonition to all the women who are listening. Don't sell yourself cheap. You are precious. You have been made precious, and you should live accordingly of what God has put in you. Be compassionate. Be good. Be modest. Be a great woman. Don't give yourself over to lust and to sensuality. Don't follow this MTV culture where you don't see a music video without about 1.5 square meters of flesh being revealed. But but make yourself classy. Present yourself as somebody who is worth every bit, and that's what you are. You are a valuable human being. Don't ever dare to sell yourself below your real price. You are precious, you are a diamond, and therefore you should be treated like a diamond as well, with all respect and with everything that is there. Okay, and I'm going to leave it on this. I just want to encourage you to really turn to God with all your heart. I also want to warn you and to let you know that this society, this world, is really going to suffer and is going to come down with a loud clash. If you want to read about the end times, there's a lot in Revelation, and the other thing is, you don't need to look around a lot. Just read the news, see what's going on, see how financial and economic systems are on the brink of collapse, and that eventually there's a time where they can't be held up any longer, and everything can go downhill very, 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 very fast. So I want to just warn you, and I want to tell you that you need to be on your guard. What can you stop? What can you do to hold this up? The first thing is you can pray. You can seek God. Seek God for your nation. Seek God for your politicians. Pray for them. Pray that they will have wisdom to make good and righteous decisions for the nation, for the land. Pray for the media. Pray for the press. And pray for the people around you, that they will see God as who He really, really is, not as some, notion which is not right, which is not correct, but as who He really is. God is righteous, and He is holy, and you cannot approach Him unless you go through Christ, and you are washed through the blood of Christ from all your guilt and all your sin by accepting the sacrifice He's done for you once and for all. Once you do this, you can then really reach out to God, and you can let Him into your life. So I want to encourage you to, wherever you are and whatever you are doing, to just reach out to God, open up your heart to Him, and shout out to Jesus to come into your life and to take hold of your life, and to come in to, get all the dirt out, get all the nasty stuff out that's inside your heart, and to bring His good stuff in there, to let you experience the love of God, the peace of God, and the fellowship of God in your life. This is the most important thing you can experience here on earth. And I tell you more, it'll last into eternity, and you will bypass the other destiny, which is the only other alternative for you. There's nothing in between, which is hell. And that is the great news. And this is what Jesus even said. Don't rejoice that you can drive out demons, but rejoice that your names are written in the book of life. This is the important thing. Make sure your name is written in God's book of life, that He has called you out of this generation to be one of His own, to be His child. The decision is yours, and all I can tell you is just reach out to Him. I'm not talking about a group, a church, a cult, or anything like that. All I'm preaching to you and all I'm talking to you about is Jesus Christ and Him crucified, and Him having died for you, having given His life for you and shed His blood for you, so that you can be right and good before God, so that you can have a new start before God, and you can reach out to Him with all your heart, all your mind, and all your soul. God bless. Bye-bye.